Oh man, coming up, we get into the story behind a top 10 hit from one of the biggest duos ever, but known more for their angelic harmonies and light and easy hits than for a shredding guitar solo. But in the 70s, they took a bold leap with today's song. They went hard rock for one hot minute. It was a major departure from their usual sound for sure, and their fans weren't happy about it. Hundreds wrote in accusing them of selling out. But the song, it was a smash, and it would set the tone for the Motley Crues and Def Leppards of the world. It's quite possibly the first power ballad ever. So what led to this dramatic shift, and what happened after? Find out next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember digging inside a Cracker Jack box for that ever-elusive toy, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the red button and click the notification bell so you know when our other great interviews come out. We got a lot of them coming. And also check out our merch and our Patreon below. I got one for you. If I asked you to name rock's first power ballad, what would be your answer? Maybe Love Hurts by Nazareth, maybe Lady by Styx.
Love hurts.
Nope. This song actually predates both of those. Now, if I asked you to name the first pop hit to feature a fuzzy guitar solo, what would be your answer? Well, the song in the spotlight today could be the answer on both of those trivia questions. It may surprise some or a lot of you in the POR community. The answer is arguably Goodbye to Love by the Carpenters. I mean, come on, Richard and Karen Carpenter were not mavens of metal by any stretch of the imagination, but on their 12th single, Goodbye to Love, they turned their hired gun guitarist loose to deliver a killer fuzzy guitar riff that confused and angered many of their loyalists who wanted another tender ballad with a lush piano and string arrangement. This song was so different from their usual material, disgruntled fans sent hate mail to their fan club, and it wasn't just a few letters here. Richard actually recalled in a few interviews that they received hundreds of letters from fans that accused the duo of selling out and turning to hard rock. Karen and Richard Carpenter had always shared a special bond, one that went beyond just being siblings. From an early age, they had an unspoken connection when it came to music. I mean, especially the way that melodies could be shaped and layered. Growing up, they were captivated by the sounds of Les Paul and Mary Ford. Mesmerized by how the duo would experiment with overdubbing and creating rich layers of voices and instruments. As they started making music together, brother and sister, those early influences stay with them. But it was Richard who saw an opportunity to take things to a new level. When Goodbye to Love came along, he felt that this was their moment to evolve, to push the boundaries of their signature sound. He envisioned something different, something bold that would surprise not only their fans, but also redefine what a Carpenters song could be. So I guess during a trip to London, Richard Carpenter watched an old Bing Crosby 1940 film called Rhythm on the River. He watched it on late night TV while lounging in his hotel room. A focal song titled Goodbye to Love was mentioned throughout the movie, but oddly enough, it didn't actually exist. Richard thought Goodbye to Love was a great title for a song. He believed it could be the perfect subject matter for his sister Karen to sing about. And right then and there, he decided if the song didn't exist, he'd be the one to write Goodbye to Love. So he immediately envisioned the structure of the tune and a set of lyrics starting with, I'll say goodbye to love. No one ever cared if I should live or die. Time and time again, the chance for love has passed me by.
No one ever cared if I should live or die.
So in the film Rhythm on the River, Basil Rathbone, who usually plays Sherlock Holmes, he portrays a famous composer known for a song titled Goodbye to Love. Here's the twist though, Bing Crosby plays an uncredited songwriter. He's the real talent behind Rathbone's success. In the story, Crosby quietly writes the hits, and Rathbone takes all the credit. However, the iconic Goodbye to Love is said to have been written before Crosby was even hired.
That's the rhythm on the river. Can't mistake.
This 1940 American musical comedy directed by Victor Schertzinger stars Bing Crosby, like I said, also Mary Martin, and they together play the ghostwriters that are the talents behind Rathbone's character's fame. The film features the song Only Forever, a duet by Crosby and Martin. The music was by James V. Monaco and lyrics by Johnny Burke. That song earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song, adding another layer of musical history to this, kind of charming film.
Only forever.
Richard recalled that while the melody kept playing in his mind, the words didn't really come out. After coming up with that first verse, he was stuck. He said, I'm not a lyricist, so after returning to the States, I just finished the arrangement. When Richard returned to LA from London, the melody for Goodbye to Love was already fully shaped in his mind. So he brought it straight to his longtime collaborator, John Bettis, ready for them to craft the lyrics together. But actually, John stepped in to complete the lyrics, bringing the song to fruition.
Always known I'd say goodbye to love.
Now, you might remember that Bettis did the similar thing, about 10 years later with Toto Steve Porcaro when he helped finish Human Nature, the top 10 hit for Michael Jackson's all-time blockbuster Thriller. Porcaro had some of the lyrics and the music, and then Bettis finished them.
Tell him that it's human nature. Why?
Now, looking back on how the song's theme and lyrics came together, Richard stated, and I quote, the whole structure of the song was kind of odd. The melody lines were really long. I remember hearing it for the first time and thinking, wow, that's a lot of words. So he told John, this one's going to be a sad song, so you got to really nail it. You got to write the hell out of this one. If it's going to be sad, it better be a home run. John Bettis was proud of the lyrics that he penned for Goodbye to Love. But I guess there was one line that never quite sat right with him, as he said. Reflecting on the third verse, he actually said, there's a line in there, no one can predict the wheel of fortune as it falls. It's probably my least favorite lyric I've ever written for the Carpenters. For one, wheels just don't fall. Now, despite his disdain for the Wheel of Fortune passage, John acknowledged that the line ultimately worked within the song's context, largely due to Richard's influence. He said, Richard liked it, and I have to admit, it does fit. It wraps up the song in a way that makes sense. So in the end, it was Richard's musical arrangement that made the lyric feel right, even if John Bettis never quite, took to his own line or shook his own critique of it. As the Carpenters worked on crafting Goodbye to Love, Richard and Karen knew they wanted something different, a sound that would break from their usual style. They decided that the song needed a fuzz guitar solo of all things, something pretty bold and unexpected. That's when Karen made a call to guitarist Tony Peluso. Tony recalled how surreal that moment was. At first, he didn't believe it was Karen Carpenter on the line at all. He actually almost hung up on her, but she repeated her name and suddenly it hit him. He was actually speaking to one of his musical idols, Karen Carpenter. She was one of his favorite singers.
Don't you remember you told me you loved me, baby?
So on the call, Karen explained that she and Richard were working on a new song, and they'd heard his work with the band Instant Joy. The siblings also noticed Tony's stellar guitar work while he was performing with Mark Lindsay of Paul Revere and the Raiders, who had actually opened a few Carpenters shows. What they saw left a big impression on them, and they thought Tony's playing style would be perfect for what they had in mind for Goodbye to Love. Ready to roll, Tony showed up at the studio and informed Richard, I don't read music, so I guess Richard actually sang and played the melody for him. And then Richard says, when you're ready, just take it away. So excited but unsure of exactly what they were looking for, Tony initially played something kind of soft and melodic, following what he thought fit the consummate sound of the Carpenters. But Richard quickly interrupted, saying, no. Play the melody for 5 bars, then burn it up, soar off into the stratosphere. Go ahead, it'll be great. Tony took that direction to heart and he just let it rip, just like Richard instructed him to do, and the result became one of the most memorable guitar solos in pop music history. Using his Gibson 335 in an F-sharp open tuning, Tony ran it through an Electro Harmonix Big Muff fuzz box, creating a raw, powerful tone with a squealing back kick. In the first 10 bars of the solo, Tony echoes the main melody of the song, but at 1 minute and 40 seconds, he breaks out with a smooth, emotional guitar riff. And then Karen comes back for the third verse at about 1 minute and 49 seconds, but it's the outro at 2 minutes 48 seconds where Tony really takes the spotlight. His raw, soaring solo elevates the track from a kind of a melancholy tune to what many consider the first true power ballad. You know, Goodbye to Love could very well be the first so-called power ballad. By definition, a power ballad is a slow rock song with a strong emotional vocal delivery and a grandiose production. Usually a big guitar solo, right? Goodbye to Love fits that definition to a T. Now, when the song was released in 1972, the term power ballad hadn't even been invented yet. It really wouldn't be used at all until more than a decade later. But let's say Goodbye to Love was the first power ballad. That seems likely, if not 100% true. But it definitely was not the first song that featured a fuzz guitar solo that was a major hit on the Billboard Hot 100. That distinction goes to a musician named Grady Martin, who played a Dan Electro 6-string baritone guitar with a fuzzy tone in the bridge of Don't Worry, a Marty Robbins crossover smash that moved all the way to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and soared to the top of the country chart clear back in 1961. Okay, so Don't Worry by Marty Robbins may be the first hit song on the pop chart of this fuzzy guitar solo, but on Marty's hit, the fuzzy solo by Grady Martin is soft and mellow, more of what you would expect on a Carpenters song, whereas on Goodbye to Love, Tony Peluso gave the Carpenters sound a 180 and, went off on his triumphant coda like a man possessed. So I'd give it to Goodbye to Love, though Richard Carpenter himself has said that he believes that Paul McCartney's Maybe I'm Amazed was the first power ballad, and that one predates the Carpenters track by about 2 years. The only problem with that is that Maybe I'm Amazed wasn't a hit until a live version of it was released in 1977 with Wings. The studio version was never released as a single. So I'm going to give it to Goodbye to Love on a technicality. Guitarist Tony Peluso knew that he had riffed on uncharted territory, not just for the music of the Carpenters, but for the pop music landscape of the 70s. 25 years later, Tony reflected back on his performance on Goodbye to Love, saying this, and I quote, "These days it's pretty common to hear big power ballads with soaring guitar solos, but back then, no one had ever done anything like that. It was totally wild. I give myself a little credit for being part of it, and playing that solo, but the idea, it wasn't mine. That was all Richard Carpenter. He was always the one with the brilliant ideas." Tony's fuzz guitar solo on Goodbye to Love marked his first contribution to a Carpenters record. It wasn't his last, though. Supremely impressed by his talent, the Carpenters brought Tony on board full-time as their lead guitarist for both studio recordings and the touring band. Beyond that, Tony even lent his voice to their hit Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, where he portrayed the DJ in the song's quirky outro. It was another departure from the usual Carpenters fare that Tony was a major part of.
If you give us your request, we'll be glad to play it for you, babe, so let's hear it.
After Karen's passing in 1983, Tony Peluso transitioned into record production, working with legendary artists like Smokey Robinson, The Temptations, Michael Jackson, and Boyz II Men. Goodbye to Love co-author John Bettis is best known for his long-standing songwriting collaboration with Richard Carpenter. In addition to Goodbye to Love, he penned the lyrics for Top of the World.
Your love's put me at the top of the world.
But here's an incredible stat for the songwriter. John Bettis has penned songs that have sold over 250 million records worldwide. 250 million. In addition to Goodbye to Love, John contributed to several other Carpenters hits, including Only Yesterday and Yesterday Once More. His success extended beyond the Carpenters, writing chart toppers for artists like Madonna, Crazy for You, the aforementioned Michael Jackson, Human Nature, the Pointer Sisters and Conway Twitty with Slow Hand, and George Strait's Heartland.
I'm crazy.
In 2011, John Bettis was honored with inductions into both the Songwriters Hall of Fame and the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy could write for pretty much any genre. So inside the A&M recording studios in Hollywood, Joe Osborne handled the bass. Hal Blaine was on drums. I mean, seriously, how amazing was Hal Blaine? One of a kind. And of course, Tony Peluso played electric guitar and fuzz. Early Dummler contributed with the oboe. Richard added backing vocals while playing piano, Hammond organ, Wurlitzer electric piano, and also directed the orchestration. As for the wonderful Karen Carpenter, there's really no studio wizardry that could improve her natural singing talent. She needed no digital processing. Absolutely not.
I'll go on as best I can.
You know, what's surprising though is that even in the best studios, there can be some ambient noise. For example, at the start of Yesterday Once More, before the drums and bass kick in, you can hear a faint hum. It's actually the air conditioning in Studio C where the Carpenters recorded it. They didn't even catch it at that time. It's really cool. I think it actually adds to the song. But Karen was a late bloomer as a vocalist. But by the time she and her brother put their duo together, she knew her voice was really something special. People often think that hitting the high notes is, the really impressive thing that a singer does. I mean, if you've ever watched the amateur singing shows like The Voice or American Idol, you know what I'm talking about. That's what they've kind of mesmerized the public with. When the contestant starts belting that high note, the production team turns on the flashing applause sign so the studio will go crazy. But in actuality, singing those low notes is where many vocalists struggle. Karen, she was different. She could nail those lower notes beautifully. A great demonstration is in the bridge of Rainy Days and Mondays, where Karen sings funny, but it seems I always wind up here with you. She was a true contralto, not just an alto. Her voice could go even lower.
But it seems I always wind up here with you.
Most of the Carpenters' songs have wide octave swings. I mean, take Close to You, for example. It begins with a low note in the melody, and Karen's voice is front and center. The piano is just holding from the intro, and then she sings Why Do Birds Suddenly Appear? And it's just completely natural for her to hit that tone. There's just something about the way she delivers lyrics with the richness of her lower register. It just grabs you by your heartstrings and pulls you in.
Do birds suddenly appear?
On Goodbye to Love, Karen delivers another gorgeous vocal. One you can hear and feel that she had some innate connection with. Karen was notoriously unlucky in love. It was hard for her to find it. That's probably why Richard thought the sentiment of the song would work so well for her. I don't know. No one knew her better than her brother Richard. He had certainly observed her inner sadness. Karen was very believable and authentic on Goodbye to Love, as with every song she sang. Karen's vocal and Richard's euphoric arrangement and the expert musicianship of the session team, it truly made Goodbye to Love a great song from the 70s, a classic. Add in Tony Peluso's guitar work, it makes this song something truly extraordinary, if not momentous in the history of popular music, I'm telling you. The Carpenters loved his solo so much, like I said, they asked him to be a full-time member after that. But a group of Carpenters devotees despised the song, because of Tony's guitar parts. Richard and Karen got a lot of hate mail. Not just a few letters, they received hundreds telling them, that they'd sold out to rock and roll and they'd succumbed to label pressure or whatever. The Carpenters were one of the most played acts on easy listening in 1972. But many AC radio stations refused to play this song because of the fuzzy guitar. But it wouldn't matter in the short or long run because the Carpenters' popularity just kept growing. In fact, Goodbye to Love became the first global smash for this group. As the fourth and final single released from the Song for You LP, Goodbye to Love still managed to become the seventh top single for the Carpenters, rising to number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100. And even with that initial resistance, it peaked at number 2 on the Easy Listening chart. The single climbed to number 4 on the Canada Top Singles chart and number 1 on the Canadian Easy Listening chart. Also hit number 9 in the UK.
And it's goodbye to love.
Everyone that knew Tony Peluso really enjoyed working with him. They called him humble, friendly, and unaffected. He was only 60 years old when he died of heart disease in 2010. Tony was a 4-time Grammy winner who also collaborated with Sills and Crofts, Kenny Loggins, The Fix, The Temptations, The Four Tops, and Animotion, among many others. He was a wide-eyed 21-year-old when Richard and Karen recruited him to join the Carpenters band. He was like a second brother to Karen, apparently. Now, Tony Peluso won't be put on the same pedestal as guitar heroes like Hendrix or Van Halen or Clapton or Page, but he was an outstanding player whose innovative guitar playing helped craft the first power ballad in the history of popular music, for my taste, for one of the most successful duos of the rock era. He set the stage for the Motley Crues and the Def Leppards and the Aerosmiths later on. Because by the 80s, the power ballad became a major part of every rock band's plan for having a hit album or a hit single. It all started with the Carpenters and one Tony Peluso. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about the Carpenters, about this song. I love the contrast. I love the experimentation. I think this is such a great song. Let's have a great discussion about the Carpenters below. What other Carpenters songs should we cover here? And let us know, what are your favorite power ballads? What do you think is the first power ballad? Let us know below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.